Mustangs. We're not done yet, boys!
Hello and welcome into the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Yates, and joining me from beautiful Austin, Texas, is senior college writer Mike Craven. And Craven, I'm happy to see you're checking in online. You haven't logged off completely after taking it on the chin on social media because the Texas 10s are out, baby. And it is opening up quite the discourse. How are you hanging in there?
I'm hanging in there. I have my filters going pretty well on Twitter, so I don't get every single reply sent to me. But the quarterback one always causes a bunch of controversy, and honestly, I get it. I think tiers would probably be the safer way to do this because you just start splitting hairs in the 4, 5, 6, 7 spot. But the Marcel Reed pushback is loud and strong, and I appreciate people paying attention and caring. And you kind of foresaw that too, because you had texted me and said, I don't want to be a hot take artist here and put Brad Jackson over Marcel Reed just to engagement farm. But I said it's not disingenuous because you actually argued this on the podcast 2 weeks ago. Yeah, I have a hard time getting around Marcel Reed's numbers against the P4, against the SEC, against ranked teams. They just weren't good enough, and we're not ranking 2025 seasons. We're projecting to 2026, and Marcel Reed's going to be asked to do it again without Casey Concepcion, with 4 new starters along the offensive line, and a new offensive coordinator, and a tougher schedule. And so, if he has the season in 26 that he had in 25, A&M's going to be 7-5 or 8-4. Well, surely when you've laid this out for Texas A&M fans on Twitter X, they've said, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then it's just conversations ended, right? That's how that goes. I have had one Aggie agree with me. What's the agreement? Is it like 0.5% agree with you? Yeah, it's less than 1% for sure. But I get it. Right. I mean, they went 11-0. They got to the CFP. They were a win away from playing for the SEC championship. Goes on the road, plays well against Notre Dame. Yet he has good numbers if you just look at them from a raw statistical standpoint. Just as I started digging in deeper to them, they just weren't very good against peer competition. I try to look at it that way, right? Like a pound for pound boxing list. Like, sure, the 7th best heavyweight probably beats, the best middleweight in the world. But that's not how we do pound for pound rankings. Kevin Jennings had a better touchdown to interception ratio against winning teams. And they had a like opponent in Miami. Brendan Sorsby, obviously he's coming in from Cincinnati, but I think what he did in the Big 12 is hard to argue against. And the market spoke for itself. Smarter people than me were going to pay $3, $4, $5 million, right, for Brendan Sorsby. I'm not sure Marcel Reed would have demanded that on the open market. I do get the Wigman, Brandon Jackson or Brad Jackson pushback when it comes to Marcel Reed, and I honestly have no problems with people who would rank Marcel Reed 4th. I think it just kind of whatever it is you like and however you look at it, I think there are reasonable takes for it. I think anytime you put out a list on social media, it's gonna get discoursed into oblivion. But I also like how we kind of workshop these takes here, Craven, in this podcast, and we talk it out and discuss, and then we send each other out to the real world to go take Quake online. So if you're listening here with us, you're listening to us workshop what we're inevitably going to get skewered for online. You can watch us fall into the hole. You can watch us dig the hole and trip into it. Yeah, and I try to talk myself out of it multiple times over the weekend. I sent Gavin, who does the graphic for me, I sent Gavin a Slack message earlier this morning. I think I might change it. Because you can never, it's when people ask you your favorite movie, what are your top 3 favorite movies? And you would give me your list today. And then if I asked you a month from now, you might give me a different movie or two because you're in a different mood. It's a different day. Maybe you've seen something more recently or you had forgot about it last time. And so I look at these rankings the same as well. They're more guides. It's March 2nd. And so if I was to make this list on May 2nd, it might look a little bit different.
Before we get to the rest of our podcast, guys, I'm sorry. I'm looking at myself on the screen. I'm blinking a ton. It's because my right contact, I literally cannot see out of it. I was driving to work today, and it's fogged up. Craven, you don't have to deal with this. because you're just rocking with the glasses. I need to bring a backup pair, and I don't have them. So I'm sorry if I'm freaking people out by just blinking. I'm not trying to say in Morse code anything like send help or something from here. So, okay.
I could never do contacts.
Can't touch your eyes?
Can't touch my eyes. I'm worried that I would get the contact in and then never out, and it would just rot into my brain or something like that. That was my fear when I was like 13 and needing to figure this out, and it's just remained my fear ever since.
There's been a couple of contacts that have gone into the back of my eyeball and gone up to the brain there a little bit. Then they kind of just work their way out. They kind of dissolve up there, and I haven't noticed a cognitive difference, Craven. I'm still super sharp. As you can tell from doing this podcast with me.
I'd like to poll other people maybe, but we'll see.
Visit Lubbock is a proud partner of Dave Campbell's Texas Football and the Gambling Gauchos podcast. Visit Lubbock has put together their guide for all things to do, can't mix experiences, and where to stay if you're traveling into Lubbock for the game. Thank you again to Visit Lubbock, and to learn more, head on over to visitlubbock.org. Okay, so we're going to talk about our first segment for this week's show. It is Texas Tech a national title contender? And, you know, we've seen that the Texas 10 list gets some people worked up online because Craven puts Marcel Reed at the number 6 ranked quarterback despite making the college football playoff. Well, now we're talking about another college football playoff team, and can they win a national title? Are they a contender? And I think on the surface you'd say, of course not, because they made it last year to the college football playoff, the tournament. But I think people wonder, was last year the ceiling? Because Texas Tech spends $28 million in NIL money. They then win their first outright conference championship since 1955 and get kind of dog-walked in their first game of the college football playoff against Oregon, 23-0. So, Craven, was that the ceiling? Was that the best it's going to get? Or are they truly a national title contender in 2026?
I've been going back and forth on this, and I'm somebody who doesn't believe there's a lot of national title contenders. You know, maybe this is about your grading system. Like some may believe there's 10 or 15 teams that can win a national championship. And I'm just not sure I would rank Texas Tech in the top 4 or 5 teams that I think could win it. And the reason I say that is the offensive playmakers. Like what worried me, I remember sitting in the press box at the Orange Bowl before that Oregon game and other media members kind of asking the question of, you know, who is the most dangerous player on Texas Tech's offense? We flash forward into the transfer portal season. I think you could say it's Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback. That was a great pickup from Cincinnati. I think his dual threat ability and what he can do with his legs is going to really open up that offense. They have a stable of running backs, especially if Quentin Joyner is back completely healthy. He got injured going into last year. I still look around at Texas Tech's wide receivers, and I just wonder who the number 1 guy is. Maybe it'll be Malcolm Simmons, the transfer from Auburn, or maybe Coy Aiken takes a bigger step up, or Micah Hudson reaches his ceiling finally, something like that. But they're going to win the Big 12. Texas Tech going 12-0 wouldn't shock me. If they win the Big 12 championship going away, it wouldn't shock me at all. But when they get into a game against an Oregon or an Ohio State or an Indiana, who is going to scare those defenses? Who is going to be the guy who makes a play on his own when everything else is taken away? I'm just not sure the Red Raiders have that. And then they lose their best linebacker. They lose a lot of their defensive line. I'm not sure the defense is going to be as dominant. I do think the offense is going to be better. But I don't know. If you're looking at the team they just lost in the Orange Bowl against in Oregon, and you just line up their playmakers, I think I'm taking the first 3 or 4 from Oregon before I get to Texas Tech. I think Texas Tech's best playmaker is probably their tight end.
Wow. Yeah, and that's not something you would often say about a Texas Tech football program, but I think some Texas Tech fans would say we're a quarterback away. So we got Brendan Sorsby, and that's going to elevate our offense because you and I both big fans of Baron Morton. Well, you're more of a big fan than I was, but he was a tough, gritty guy, a character program guy. He was just so injured at the end of last season that he didn't have that ceiling they needed to compete for a national championship. So you insert Brendan Sorsby and say, okay, we were just a quarterback away. Now we're going to be better. Do you think he will elevate the receivers enough? Or is there a lot more holes on this roster than just the quarterback?
I see Brendan Sorsby more as a runner than a thrower.
Whoa, okay. That's your next take, Quake, by the way.
That's not to say he can't pass. I mean, but he only threw for 2,700 yards last year, right? Like this isn't a 4,000 yard, spread it around, get in the air raid, be 5 wide, and throw the ball 40-something times a game. I think where he's going to help Texas Tech the most is in pass protection in terms of just running around and getting something going. I think he is going to create plays in that way and get some busted coverages because of his legs. And all of a sudden the secondary gets sucked up and somebody's wide open. He's going to really help that running game. And I think they're going to look more like a kind of a traditional Utah team. Maybe just like in terms of have 2 or 3 running backs that can pound you, got a quarterback that can move around, just going to out physical you up front. They do bring back, I think 4 of their 5 starters along the offensive line. And, Cash Cleveland's, probably the new starter. I think he's going to be pretty good, former Colorado transfer. So I think Texas Tech is going to BYU or Utah, the Big 12. Like they're just going to bully the Big 12, run them over. I think they're still going to be good on defense. I believe Texas Tech is a college football playoff, almost a virtual lock. What I'm not sure about is when they start playing against teams that also have the same level of coaching, also have the same level of roster construction in terms of money that they can get in. Like we saw last year against Oregon. I'm not sure Brennan Sorsby is that guy to just go and make everybody better and go make these 5 or 6 plays that you'll need against Oregon. Is he Fernando Mendoza, right? Like, is he going to be a transfer that walks into Texas Tech and now we're talking about him as a Heisman finalist and a future first-round draft pick? I don't know. I don't know if that is true or not. Maybe. But right here sitting in March, I'm not sure if the improvements that they made offensively are enough to get over that level of hump. Like, they already made the quarterfinals. There's only, 2 more games? I'm not great at math. There's like 2 or 3 more games to win. So the margins are very small here, and we're probably splitting hairs. But I'm not sure I would put Texas Tech in that top flight category yet. And it's not necessarily the quarterback. To me, it's the wide receivers. Just who are those stars going to be? I'm not sure we know that yet.
So I guess the question is, if you don't see Texas Tech as a college football playoff championship contender in 2026, can they be? Or was last year truly the best it's ever going to get? Like, do you foresee, maybe if it's not this year, but next year, they could be a national championship contender?
It's a good question because, it's easy to use Miami and go, they were 10-2. They snuck in, they get the 10 seed, they go beat A&M, then they beat Ohio State. Like, anything can happen, right? These teams can go on a run. But Miami's offensive line was just incredible. I think Texas Tech's defensive line was just as good as Miami's. I'm not sure their offensive line is going to be as good as the 2025 Miami offensive line. They have, for sure, first-round draft pick at one of the tackles, maybe 2, depending on where they think the right tackle is going to go. So I'm just not sure that they're big enough up front offensively or good enough up front offensively. But again, I'm repeating myself. Like, to me, it's just, I don't know. Can the wide receivers get separation against Oregon's cornerbacks or Indiana's or Ohio State's or Georgia's cornerbacks? Like, I don't know that question yet. I don't think we've seen any of those wide receivers do that. And that was a big issue for them against Oregon. Like, it's easy to look at Baron Morton's box score and go like, well, if he hadn't thrown those interceptions, Texas Tech wins that game. Well, he threw those interceptions because Texas Tech couldn't block Oregon and they couldn't get open. Mm-hmm. Some of it is that. It's not like he was missing wide open wide receivers or had 4 seconds to sit in the pocket and survey things. Like, Texas Tech struggled against an elite defensive line and their wide receivers struggled to get open against an elite secondary. Well, they're going to run into those things again eventually. Like, not in the regular season, not in the Big 12 championship game. But if they make it to the same spot they did last year and then the final 8, they're going to play against one of those teams. And I'm just not sure that they can do that. My question is, do you think the schedule hurts them? Like, they won't get tested maybe until January 1st.
I have their schedule right here, Craven. It is Abilene Christian, Sam Houston, and Oregon State in non-conference. That doesn't prepare you for Big 12 play, much less the college football playoff. And if we're saying that Texas Tech, their most likely path to the college football playoff is winning the Big 12 and therefore probably getting that first round bye, that means your first hard game is Oregon, basically. Not like first, okay, Big 12 championship, of course, yes, but like your first game against a college football playoff type team is sometimes going to be Oregon.
Yeah, they don't play a team that finished in the top 20 last year in the regular season. Because they don't get Utah. They don't have BYU. And while I believe that makes Texas Tech a virtual lock to make the college football playoff, I wonder in the grand scheme of things if that's good for the team. Indiana can do the cupcake schedule thing, but they're going to play in Ohio State or in Oregon or Michigan, someone in the Big Ten that really tests them. And then the Big Ten championship, they're definitely going to play somebody that can really test them. So they get hardened, right? You can see where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are. You can kind of feel that talent gap and what that's going to feel like once you get to a January 1st quarterfinal. I'm not sure Texas Tech will. And I wonder if that is a positive or a negative. It's positive in terms of locking up a CFP spot. I do wonder if it works against Texas Tech, if there's a little bit of a shock and awe when, you've just blown through everybody the whole season, and then you line up and you go like, holy crap, they're just as big and fast and as well paid as we are. This is going to come down to who makes the plays. Last year, Texas Tech had playmakers on defense with Jacob Rodriguez and David Bailey. Do they have those guys defensively? And then offensively, they were missing those weapons. And I'm just not sure. They went after Cam Coleman hard. If Cam Coleman signs with Texas Tech, I have a different answer.
Of course, yeah.
But is Coy Aiken a wide receiver one? I don't know. And we could look at Indiana last year and go who's Indiana's best wide receiver? And that's maybe a fair criticism to my argument here. But I'm not sure Brendan Sorsby, as good as he is future number 1 NFL draft pick.
I might be doing some Joey McGuire propaganda here, Craven, but when you bring up, do they have those guys on defense? I saw Joey McGuire go on the Andy and Ari show with On3, and he had brought up that David Bailey this past year had more sacks last year than he did in 3 years combined at Stanford. Romello Height was on his fourth school, 69 career quarterback pressures, and then last year alone he had 62. That's what McGuire said. 62 quarterback pressure seems like an insane amount. I don't know if that might be a little bit of an inflated number. But nevertheless, I don't think Texas Tech's coaching staff and program around these players gets a lot of credit at times because people want to say they just bankroll these players.
Yeah, I mean, Shill Wood's as good as it gets.
Yeah.
He's an excellent defensive coordinator. Texas Tech's defense is going to be top 5 in stop rate again. And maybe guys like Adam Trick and the San Diego State transfer Trey White, maybe they end up we're talking this time next year, and those two guys were just as good as David Bailey or Romello Height. But that's a gamble. That's something we're not 100% sure of yet. And so, and we, to Joey's point, we weren't sure about David Bailey and Romello Height either, and that's why Texas Tech wasn't the runaway favorite to win the Big 12 going into the season, when it became obvious midway through the season that they were clearly the best team. So that could be true. It's just hard. You're telling me the defense is going to get better when you lose a top 5 defensive end draft pick in the NFL and a Butkus Award winner at middle linebacker. We shall see. Will the jump on the offensive side be enough to mitigate any type of decline on the defensive side? I don't know. And again, if we're talking about beating BYU or Utah, I think Texas Tech's going to be fine. There'll be a double-digit favorite. Great. Ohio State, Georgia, a Texas team with stars all over the field. Who does Texas Tech have? Terrence Carter Jr. is an excellent tight end. It's just hard for tight ends to be that big of a difference maker in those type of big games if there aren't wide receivers you have to concentrate on as well. Maybe a couple of them emerge throughout the season. Malcolm Simmons from Auburn has a lot of upside, has a big-time ceiling. Can he be wide receiver 1 against the elite of the Big Ten, the elite of the SEC? I'm not sold on that right now in March.
Let me try to summarize our take here, Craven. Texas Tech is a virtual lock to make the college football playoff in 2026, but they are not a national championship contender because they don't have the wide receiver ability, and Brendan Sorsby's not going to make up for all that, and they got a little bit worse on the defensive side. But Texas Tech in 2-3 years could be national championship contender on any given year. Is that or do you agree with that, Craven? Or do you not even think in 2-3, 2028, 2029, they're a national championship contender almost every year?
Oh, no, I think Texas Tech is building its way to be a national championship contender, and I wouldn't be surprised if they had a Clemson-type run where they're dominating their conference, they're getting into the playoff, and then they start knocking off the SEC and the Big Ten elites on the way to national championships. But it took Clemson a couple of times, and I do believe it'll take Texas Tech more than 2 years, and it'll take recruiting those superstars in high school and having them on your roster already. It is hard to go get the Cam Colemans of the world out of the portal. One, you're going to have to overspend, and where does that leave your money? Not that Texas Tech is lacking any of that, but there has to be some sort of semblance of a cap, even if it's self-indulged, right? Like you have to, like, this is the money that we're spending on this roster. If we're spending it on these high school guys, we can't go get everybody that we want out of the portal. And now with revenue share, it's easier to keep those players on your roster if you are a different team. But what gives me, I guess, hope that Texas Tech can become a national championship contender over the next couple of years is what they're doing in recruiting from the high school ranks. Getting real offensive linemen with 5-star potential. Getting edge rushers like Guyton with real 5-star potentials. You're getting wide receivers and top playmakers on the offensive side of the ball that are in our top 40, top 50 on the DCTF, top 100. Like, you got Micah Hudson. Even though Micah Hudson hasn't like hit in terms of what he was supposed to be, you have proven you can go get 5-star playmaker wide receiver. If you populate your roster with those guys enough, they will hit at a big enough number to go compete with the Georgias, the Ohio States, or the Indianas. I just don't see it yet. And that, I mean, I had Indiana like 20th last year going into the season. So I am not at all going to sit here and pretend like I am gospel. But I have a hard time shaking that Oregon game away in terms of just how overmatched that offense looked. And if we look at this depth chart right now, the two deep on the offensive side of the ball, my biggest question against Oregon was, who scares you on Texas Tech's offense? And as we sit here in March, previewing the season, my question for Texas Tech's offense is still, who scares you at wide receiver?
Love Texas, love football, then you'll love College Station, home of the Aggies and so much more. Come eat, play, relax, and say howdy to one heck of a good time. Plan your trip at visitcollegestation.com. So Texas Tech is the clear-cut favorite in the Big 12, even if we don't think they're going to be a national championship contender. But there's a couple other teams in the Big 12 in Texas and one in the ACC and SMU who I think are fighting for that Tier 3, I would say. Actually, no, they'd be Tier 2 in Texas because the top tier is A&M, Texas, Texas Tech. Then let's look at some of these Tier 2 teams, TCU, Houston, SMU. Craven, which one do you think is going to be the best among those three schools in 2026?
Well, the team I'm picking to have the best season is SMU. I'm not sure that would be the team I would pick in terms of who the best is. Like if we lined them up on the field and you played kind of a round robin, who would emerge? Like maybe I would pick a different team. But when you combine Kevin Jennings coming back as a year 3 starter in that same system, along with an ACC schedule that doesn't include Clemson, doesn't include Miami, SMU is, I think, 14-2 in conference play over the last 2 years with Jennings as the starter at quarterback.
And he's healthy now, so that's important.
And he's healthier, and the offensive line is really good. Like we can talk about kind of the skill positions around him, and he's going to need some guys to really step up, specifically at wide receiver or tight end. But they bring back P.J. Williams, they bring back Bates and Addison. Like they have a really good offensive line up there. I think SMU has a better chance of competing in the ACC than TCU or Houston does in the Big 12.
Now, how concerned are you about the loss of the defensive coordinator, Scott Simons? Because that is one of the main reasons I did not pick them.
Yeah, I think it's a big concern, along with just replacing your whole starting defensive line. You lose 2 pretty solid defensive tackles there. You lose some edge rushers that by the end of the year were 2 of the best edge rushers in the ACC. The Mustangs made a lot of plays last year, and Scott Simons, super good defensive coordinator. That's how you get a job with the Dallas Cowboys. But the reason I don't know if it's a huge step backwards is because they went in-house. Like Maurice Crum, former, I think All-American at Notre Dame, really good football player at Notre Dame. He's been there. He's been in that building. He's had chances to go elsewhere. He's been a DC before. He's called plays at Western Kentucky a few years ago, so this won't be a first-time defensive coordinator kind of calling plays type deal that you have to deal with. So I think that they were able to keep it in-house. I like what they did in the portal. I think the ACC is a little bit easier when you don't have to play Miami, especially. And so I just like SMU there.
Okay, I am going to see your SMU and raise you potentially Houston, the Cougars. I'm going with Houston because we both know, Craven, we're Willie Fritz guys. Willie Fritz is a wizard. 10-win seasons at 5 different schools, all of those at different levels of the college football hierarchy. I also just love what they've done in the transfer portal. You've written about it on TexasFootball.com, but they have the 8th highest transfer portal index score. Basically, like the imports are far better than the exports. And I love what they've done on the offensive line with Anthony Boswell from Toledo, Shadre Hurst from Tulane. I think they're going to make Connor Wegman a little bit more comfortable this year. Hopefully, he doesn't have to run as much because Mekhi Hughes, the transfer from Oregon, can supplement some of that quarterback run game. So I love Connor Wegman coming back with a much improved offensive line. The one thing that gives me pause is the schedule looks really tough. And I know this is a fool's errand in the Big 12 because it's impossible to predict who's the best team in the Big 12 in March, especially because that conference is so unpredictable. But they have to travel to Lubbock versus Texas Tech. They're at Kansas State, which is always the scary place to play. And then they got to go to Utah as well. So I'm trusting in Willie Fritz, but that schedule is a bear.
Yeah, I kind of hinted at it earlier. If we played neutral site between these three teams, I do think Houston might be a couple point favorite here. But as you mentioned, we have to play the schedule game. And there are two types of Big 12 schedules. There are the types with 4 road games, and there are types with 5, right? And Houston this year has 5. You mentioned the first 3, Texas Tech, Kansas State, Utah. They also have to go to Colorado, which in altitude, not an easy place to play. And a week after going to Colorado, you go to West Virginia. And if you ask Big 12 coaches, the hardest place to play in the Big 12, just like if you took away team talent away from it and stuff, like West Virginia is a hard trip. It is a hard place to get to. So it is a long road trip. And those people are insane. Like in a good
they
way.
burn couches, dude.
Right. Like in a good way. It is a crazy place to play. Those are 5 big time road trips out of the state to places that are typically tough to play against. And then at home, you get teams like Baylor. I think the home schedule is pretty solid. Although we saw, Houston kind of blow one last year, I think against UCF at home last year. And so I just think it's a tougher schedule. Who was it was West Virginia. It was West Virginia at home that they blew that one against last year. I think it's a tougher schedule. Teams obviously will not overlook Houston this year. Like they will go into the year as one of the 4 or 5, predicted teams to win the Big 12. I think that is a little bit tougher, right? It's easier to go from 4 wins to 9 wins in the regular season than it is to go from 9 wins to 11 wins. And that's what we're going to need from Houston to really be a Big 12 contender. So you combine the schedule with just not being kind of the Cinderella under the radar team that can kind of jump up and bite a couple of programs. I think Houston's going to have a hard time getting back to the 9-10 win plateau.
Yeah, and I seem to remember another time when Connor Wegman had a lot of preseason hype and expectations and was maybe on the cover of a summer magazine, and then how that went the following fall. So it remains to be seen how they handle these expectations. But I do want to glom onto the first thing you said, Craven, which is if you put them on a neutral site, Houston would be favored over SMU. I think that is just such a testament to Willie Fritz and company and the program they've built in a short amount of time. Because imagine saying that even a year ago.
And maybe Vegas would disagree. I do think it would be very coin flippy. SMU is replacing a lot defensively as well, a lot around Kevin Jennings. Houston has Amari Thomas coming back. I like what they did, as you mentioned, in the transfer portal, a really good portal class for Fritz and co. Patrick Overmeyer may end up being kind of a second-team All-State guy in the magazine at tight end. The offensive line guys that you mentioned are legit, surefire, all-conference starters. So, Willie Fritz, one of the best coaches in the country. I think Houston is going to be a very good team. It's just the road to get there for Houston is much tougher than the road for SMU. And we'll know a lot about SMU early on. Like 2 of their first 3 games are at Florida State, at Louisville. Like those are both on the road conference games in September. If they can get through those at 2-0 or even 1-1, the Mustangs are kind of downhill from there. Like the rest of the schedule is very easy. They do play on the road against Notre Dame late, but that won't count against the conference standings. And remember, if you win your conference, you're in. If you win the ACC, you're going to be in. You win the Big 12, you're going to be in. Houston has to go through Tech and some other teams on the road that are going to be tougher than what SMU has to go through. So if you're asking me right now, like who can compete for their conference championship, I think I lean SMU over Houston. But if they were meeting, like what's in between Dallas and Houston on 45? Like if they were meeting like Corsicana or something like that, like I think I'd take Houston by a field goal, but I wouldn't feel too comfortable about it.
Sign me up for SMU, Houston, and Corsicana. Stop by a Buc-ee's there before or something like that. That'd be amazing. Why did you not pick TCU?
Well, the quarterback change. If Josh Hoover was coming back, I think TCU is right in the mix of this. And, I think Jaden Craig's going to be good. I think he was one of the more underrated, under the radar quarterback pickups in the transfer cycle. When you come from Harvard, you're not going to get as many likes on Instagram as if you're getting a big time player that other places know.
A lot more likes on LinkedIn though.
That's right. That's right. I do trust Sonny's ability to develop it and get quarterbacks. I think he's shown that throughout his coaching career, like going back to like Nick Foles at Arizona, like he's Tanner Mordecai at SMU. Like he's going to find guys that maybe didn't demand a lot of attention. But you got a new offensive coordinator, a new quarterback. The Frogs also have, a tougher schedule than I think SMU does, specifically inside that conference. So I do like Andy Avalos in that defense going into year 3. But you're gonna have to replace a lot at linebacker. You're losing Bud Clark in the secondary. There's more question marks for TCU, I believe, than there is for SMU or Houston right now.
Look, there's a reason Josh Hoover is now on the reigning national champion Indiana Hoosiers, and Kurt Cignetti is one of the best evaluator guys in college football right now. It's how he built up Indiana from all-time cellar dweller to national champion in 2 years. So if you're in Mike Craven's mention saying, actually, Hoover was the problem, we're going to be better without him, you're insane.
Yes. Yes, that is true. And TCU, I hate playing the schedule game all episode, but that's like kind of what you have to do when you're splitting hairs here. TCU plays BYU. They play Kansas State. They play Utah. They play Texas Tech. Maybe not all 4 of those teams end up hitting their ceiling, but a couple of them will. And so I just think their road compared to SMU is much tougher, probably right there along the lines with Houston. But Houston, what's nice about Houston, I need to think about this more before. I shouldn't just say stuff on the podcast before I've really gone through it in my head. I believe Houston is the only FBS team in Texas that's going to bring back their head coach, their offensive coordinator, their defense coordinator, and the quarterback.
I'm just rifling through teams in Texas, and yeah, you're probably right.
I think so. And so, there's something to be said about that continuity. And so I like that about Houston. What I like about
Texas
SMU
Tech,
is the ACC road. Now they bring a new quarterback.
Oh, quarterback. I forgot about the quarterback part. Yeah. Sorry, that was dumb.
Yeah, head coach, both coordinators, and quarterback.
Maybe I do have a contact up in my brain, actually, to call back to the start of the episode.
I do believe Houston is the only one in the state to do that. I think that continuity is important.
I also picked against TCU, not for the smart reason you did, but because they're playing in Ireland in week 0 against North Carolina, and they should win, but whoever loses that game just goes on to a nightmare of a season. Like last year, Kansas State quarterback Avery Johnson, his dad and brother fighting in the mud outside of the stadium in Ireland. And then I believe it was two years ago, Florida State, the DJ Uiagalelei year, where they lose to Georgia Tech, I think it was, and then go 2-10. So whoever loses that game is cursed. And if they lose that game, I'm immediately saying they can't have a better year than SMU and Houston.
Yeah, the Dublin thing is so dumb. I cannot believe TCU got SMU off the schedule so they could go play North Carolina and Ireland and then host Grambling State and Arkansas State. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah, unbelievable. I could go on a full tangent about playing games in Dublin. I mean, why do you not like the game in Dublin? Just because it's like insane travel, and like, why are you doing that to your guys and your squad?
Yeah, that and college football should be played on campuses.
True.
There are like 3 games that shouldn't be played on campus. That's Texas, Oklahoma, Florida, Georgia, and Army Navy. And Army Navy on campus is fine. They also tore that around, and I don't have a big complaint about that because I understand why they try to hit different spots with it. But everything else should be played on campus. Like that is what college football is about. And to lose a rivalry against a team that is 30 miles from you, to trade it with another ACC team that you then have to go to Ireland when you didn't get to play them at home. Like last year, you're North Carolina. You're giving away a home game and then replacing, SMU with Grambling State and Arkansas State. Like, who wins there except for the coaches and the ADs who get paid more if they hit a certain win mark?
Yeah, the fans, because they got an extra home game, right, Craven? You got to do it for your season ticket holders.
Yeah, because that extra Grambling State home game is going to like really wake up the city of Fort Worth and pack Amon Gene Carter Stadium, I'm sure.
Yeah, Stockyard's going to be lit. I don't like the Ireland game because I feel like college football and the NFL are both doing more international games. So that way, one day they can make the college football national championship in England or Ireland, and they can make the Super Bowl in London. And my point there is we fought a war so we could have our football in the States.
Yeah, and you don't see like what I respect about soccer fans in Europe is they try to do the Super League thing and they like rioted. And that included fans of teams that would have been in the Super League. Like it wasn't just the small teams that were going to get left behind making the noise. Like even the Liverpool and Barcelona fans were like, "What is this? This is dumb." You would never see Manchester United and Man City play a regular season English Premier League game in like DC.
Never.
Like they can watch it on TV. Like we don't have to do this. Yeah, I think it's dumb. I think there's a reason that a lot of the teams that have played in that game have kind of folded, specifically after losses. It throws off the whole calendar. It is useless, and is there a huge Ireland TV market that I'm unaware of? Like I think it's all silly.
Yeah, so we've done the look ahead to 2026, Craven. We've basically closed the book on the 2025 year, but I do want to talk about our two first-year head coaches that we had in the state of Texas and do a final grade now that we've had the dust settle. We've got the emotion out of it. Let's look at what Phil Longo did at Sam Houston and what Scott Abell did at Rice and give them a letter grade. Who you want to start with, Craven?
Let's start with Rice.
Okay. Do you have a letter grade for Scott Abell, and why?
I'm giving him a B.
Okay.
When I season graded Rice, or when I did season grades for all the G4, G5 teams in the state of Texas, I gave Rice a C, I believe, and there was some pushback from Al fans, and I think they were right. Like I am a big enough man to admit when I get a take wrong.
Not about the Marcel Reed thing, though. Just Rice.
Yeah, well, because I wasn't wrong there. But I do think I was wrong on the Rice take. Like they made a bowl game. They won games that they should. They upset Louisiana to start the year. There was a high raise in terms of attendance and donor money. I think Abell did almost everything that he could in year one to get a solid grade, something above C. I think the way he could have gotten into an A is maybe pulled an upset within the American Conference. Like they beat the teams they were like, and they lost to the teams that they weren't supposed to beat, which I think is fine in year one. But that's why I won't give them an A. But on the field, you got an extra win. You got to a bowl game. Off the field, I think you really energized the fan base and the students to a point where relatively for Rice, correct, after year one. So. I think all in all, a solid job for Abell. And when you go outside the box and you hire a coach off the radar from Davidson who runs the weird offense, like you kind of wonder how it'll take. And it feels like a year after that hire, Rice knocked it out of the park and all the decision makers are happy about it.
Yeah, they had a 29.11% increase in attendance this year, Craven. So it goes to your point of re-energizing the fan base. I love looking at the 2025 magazine ceiling and floor predictions to kind of gauge what the expectations were for that upcoming year. So, Craven, their ceiling in the magazine was 6-6. Their floor was 1-11. And that floor tells you it could have been really, really dire for Rice this last year. But finishing 5-8, right under that 6-6 ceiling, but did make a bowl game, which was huge. Shout out Rice students for that high APR. In academics, and the preseason win total from DraftKings was 3.5. So did a lot better than expectations. That's why I'd give them a B as well too.
Yeah, I mean the only game that was truly disappointing was the FAU loss at home when they lost 27-21 to another first-year coach in Zach Kitley.
The UTSA one was pretty bad too, losing like 75-13 or whatever it was.
Yeah, but that was a UTSA team that like needed a win, needed a cathartic moment. They had lost to Rice the year before on the road. Like that was a get right game for the Roadrunners, and that was the 7th or 8th game in a row played by Rice. Like it was the game right before the bye for them. So it was a bad loss, obviously, but I don't think it was like a bad loss when we look back on it in terms of like who they lost to. But there are other losses. Like here are their losses in conference play: Navy, FAU, UTSA, Memphis, North Texas, USF. Like those are teams you're going to lose to in year one as the head coach at Rice. Again, you win that FAU game, you're 6-6 in the regular season. You hit the ceiling, as you just kind of referenced, and we give you an A. The Louisiana win was huge, on the road to start the year. I think it's a little bit downgraded because Louisiana didn't end up being good like they normally are, so that hurt them as well. But yeah, I think overall, great year for Abell, great kind of foundation set for this new staff and this new direction for Rice. I think they hit it out of the ballpark. Give them a B.
Okay, now what do we do for Sam Houston and Phil Longo? Because I don't know if we can say hit it out of the ballpark quite yet. I think actually you'd be insane if you said that right now after the first year. What's your grade, Craven?
I'm giving a D.
Ugh.
And it's not all Longo's fault. Like I do think there are legitimate reasons in which Sam Houston took such a nosedive after the 9-10 win season the year before. 9 wins in the regular season, 10 with the bowl game. You get hired late in the portal. I think in today's world, that's a legitimate deal, right? Like your whole team's in the portal before you even get there. Most of the guys you want to go after are already locked up. It's too late to get a bunch of players and visits and stuff like that. Like it was hard to put together a roster, and I give him that pass. I also think not playing at home is something I'm not going to overstate. Like I'm not that Bowers is Kyle Field, but it's different playing in front of 15 to 20,000 of your own fan base on campus where you don't have to take a bus to the game, and like then busing an hour to South Houston to play in an empty stadium that is plastic and neutral and probably as many fans from the other team as yours because it's just parents in the stands.
4,700 average attendance at their home games this year, Craven.
And all of the travel. I mean, you go to Oregon State, you go to Hawaii, you go to Western Kentucky to start the year. Like it was an insane. I honestly think other than Hawaii, I believe Sam Houston traveled more than anybody in the country. It was top 5 for sure. And so you add the travel, you add the late portal, you add the off-campus, like the hour and a half away home games. It is easy to give Longo the passes. Where I grade Longo harshly on is the kind of the off-field stuff. Like it just never felt like the fan base and the people that worked there and the player, like it never felt like positive. Like there was no honeymoon season. Like even coaches, like if we look at Scotty Walden at UTEP, he didn't have a great first year either. They lost a lot of football games, but there felt like there was some recruiting and just the buzz. Like it just felt like there was something going there. It's hard to be the guy who follows the guy. And Casey Keeler was an excellent coach, national championship winner in the FCS, takes him to a 10-win season in year 2 as a conference. It was always going to be hard to follow him. I'm not sure anybody felt like energized and excited about Longo, and I'm not sure what the energy level or optimism level is in Huntsville right now going into year 2.
Yeah, I gave Longo, the football coach, a C- for all the reasons you listed, Craven, but I gave Longo as the PR man, CEO of the program, an F. Because like you laid out, Craven, I mean, I remember I talked to Longo for the magazine preview, and Longo had told a story about when he was the offensive coordinator, how Casey Keeler never let Longo be the offensive coordinator guy and let him run all the scheme and call the plays. And the only time he ever had a play suggestion, he came in and said, "Let me show you this, Longo," and drew it up on the whiteboard and said, "What do you think?" And Longo goes, "Coach, there's 12 guys in that formation." And Casey Keeler threw the marker up and walked out and never came back in again. But Longo credited him for being an amazing CEO of the program. And you and I, Craven, both thought Casey Keeler going 10 wins 2 years ago at Sam Houston was the best coaching job in the country. Longo said he is too much of a technical football guy he wants to be on the whiteboard. He wants to be in the film room. He can't be that CEO type of guy like Casey Keeler was. He's got to get more like that, though, to have his own marketing campaign around the team, get the fan base excited and energized. I went and visited with him for the preseason magazine preview. I didn't hear him speak for the rest of the year. He's just in his bunker trying to draw up football plays. And sometimes, dude, you need that when your team's not going to be that great and you're up against the wall. You got to energize the fan base somehow.
Yeah, and you're an offensive guy, right? You're the offensive coordinator. You were hired to put up big points. You bring in your quarterback from Wisconsin, and you have a quarterback returning that helped a team win 10 games in Hunter Watson. And neither one of those guys in the year as a starter. They're not on campus anymore. And Landon Locke's going to be your guy rolling into 2026. Sam Houston was the worst scoring team in Conference USA by 4 points. They averaged 17.8 points per game. Next on the list was New Mexico State at 21.6. I believe they're also the worst scoring defense in the league. They gave up 37.8 points per game, which was almost a touchdown worse than Delaware, who was in 11th. And so the offense wasn't good, and that is your side of the ball. The defense wasn't good either. Just not a lot of buzz for Sam Houston. And we go into 2026, and it's like, what is the ceiling for Sam Houston? Like, it's probably 6-6, right? It's maybe getting to a bowl game. Just not, I don't know. It just didn't feel like a great year one on the field or off the field. We'll see if the portal class that they just brought in can elevate the play.
Well, not only was Longo the offensive guru whose then offense was lifeless throughout the year, he also, I've seen screenshots and pictures in the stadium of Longo on the bench with the quarterbacks going over the next offensive drive while the defense is getting penalized for having 12 men on the field. He got better at that as the year went on. But at the start of the year, he was in full offensive coordinator mode, sometimes on game day. And I think that is also frustrating.
Yeah, I think that's really hard. Like when you're struggling offensively and you just don't have any consistency at quarterback and you're not scoring points, like I think as the play caller, you almost have to be that way. And one of the knocks against Longo when he was hired was he doesn't have a lot of experience as a head coach. Right? He was one at LaSalle for a couple of years, a program that kind of went away after he was done there. So he's been an OC his whole entire life, and you can just be the football guy when you're the OC. But when you're the head coach, there's so much more that goes into that. Like you're almost in customer relations, and your customers are your fan base. And it just didn't feel like it felt like they were swimming so much on the football side that they were never able to address anything else. And when the football product also isn't good, that leaves this big chasm in terms of like how people feel the program is going. And there usually is this kind of year one honeymoon phase where the fan base is in love with the coach is in love with the fan base. Everyone's excited, even if the results aren't there. You kind of have some building blocks and you hold on to those embers, and you go into year two with some optimism. I'm not sure what that optimism is at Sam Houston right now.
That is a really good point, Craven, because I think about all the other teams I've either been a fan of or I've covered. In that first year, I mean, you have to go winless that first year to have the fan base kind of jump off board a bit. And I'm not saying Sam Houston fans have done that, but they're not actively defending Longo as much as I would like to see, honestly.
And it's a tough job. Like Sam Houston is a hard job. Like you don't have a lot of money. You had the off-campus thing. You get hired late. So again, I don't want to completely bury him. That's why I wouldn't give him an F. I think you're allowed to learn on the job. You're basically a first-year head coach. It didn't go the way you wanted to in year one. Like you shouldn't be completely written off and your prospects completely written off because of that. But he's going to need to really impress and have a good year two for that optimism to start to rise. It's been a wait and see approach, I believe, by the Sam Houston fan base. And now they're going to get a better view of it on campus. And right there'll be more people in the stands, I think, which will be more booing too, right? Like if it's not going well, like there will be more of an interface aspect to it than there was last year. And I think that's where, Longo's got to improve as much as the on the field stuff.
Yeah, Sam Houston starts off like 0-6 next year. It's like, hey, we're actually going back to Shell Energy Stadium for a special reunion tour.
Yeah. And what the good news is Conference USA, like upward mobility is allowed, encouraged even. You saw some teams compete for Conference USA championship last year that were on brand new coaches or were programs that haven't been up in the FBS for much longer, or if not even longer than Sam Houston. And so nobody needs to remind Bearcats fans that you can go from bottom tier to top deck pretty quickly in Conference USA. They did it from 23 to 24. Now they just needed to do it from 25 to 26. The problem is you don't have one of the 10 winningest coaches active in college football as your head coach. You have somebody who still is learning how to be a head coach, I think. And they're going to have to put it all together, really hit on the transfer portal thing and take a big jump forward for Bearcat fans to be like, oh, okay, well, we're back. We can go win a conference championship in 2027. Let's really support this team. I just think there's kind of a raised eyebrow on kind of what Sam Houston is, and it's up to Longo and this 2026 bunch to rewrite that.
It'll be an uphill battle for Longo and the Bearcats, but we'll have you covered for all of it as we chug along through spring practice, magazine seasons kickstarting Craven. When you're heading to Denton for game day, make it more than just 4 quarters of football. Make it a weekend to remember. Discover Denton's vibrant downtown square, amazing food scene, live music every night, and hotels that put you close to all the action. Whether it's Mean Green football or just a Texas getaway, Denton is where hip intersects with historic. Plan your visit now at discoverdenton.com. Any closing thoughts before we get on out of here for the week?
Yeah, I mean, spring ball is a couple of weeks away. Working through those Texas 10s, as you said, quarterback's out by the time this podcast is out. Wide receiver and running back will be as well. The one thing I've noticed going through it, and it was alarming last year, and it's even more so this year, trying to fit G5 players on these top 10 lists is virtually impossible. They're just not there. Like, there may be guys that end up one of the 10 best running backs or 10 best wide receivers in the state by the end of the year. You know, you saw like a Robert Henry kind of emerge, have this big time season. Drew Mestonmaker comes out of nowhere and is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. So I'm not saying the talent isn't there. Somebody's got to get the numbers, right? But it's just like, if you're good, you're gone, is what it feels like. Which is why I think Texas State is poised to maybe be the North Texas of 2025. They're the ones that are populated on this list. Like, every time I'm trying to add some guys or find some G6 representatives, it feels like I kind of come back to Texas Tech. Maybe that's Texas State. Maybe that's just because I've done offense so far. But with Burrell back at running back, Jackson back at quarterback, 2,000-yard receivers on the offensive side of the ball, it feels like the Bobcats just have production that is experienced and that is known at that level in a way that, you know, UTSA, definitely North Texas, because of the coaching change, a lot of those programs don't. So it's just, I remember when I first got here, you know, the all Texas teams in the magazine were probably like a 65-35 split, maybe a 60-40 split between the P4 and the G5. I think this year it's going to be 90-10, maybe 95-5, just because you just don't have anything to go on.
Dude, this is the year for GJ Kinney. I know. Look, every year after the first 2 games, we say, which big-time head coaching job, not that Texas State isn't a big-time program and a big-time opportunity, but like, which Oregon, Baylor, which of the next jobs is GJ Kinney going to get? This is actually the year with who they've got coming back, and I'm even more convinced of that now by you filling out your Texas 10s.
Yeah, I think this is a monster year for Texas State, not only because they're year 1 in the Pac-12 and you want to make a splash in year 1, but because you have invested a lot to keep those guys, right? Like, it wasn't free to keep Brad Jackson. It wasn't free to keep Bo Sparks and Chris Don. It wasn't free to bring in a new defensive coordinator and load that side of the ball up. Like, Texas State is in it. They have a president and an athletic director who are in it. They have a fan base that is ready to go. They're in the Pac-12. Like, there is all this momentum building. I would say the highlight for Texas State is still that first game of the GJ Kinney era, right? Like, they just never broke through and competed in the Sun Belt and got to a conference championship game, despite being one of the more talented teams. Like, there's no excuses anymore. It's year 4. You can't have the October slump. The defense, you got a new coordinator. This is your, 3rd defensive coordinator now, your 2nd one that you've hired over the last 3 years. Like, you don't need to go 12-2 like North Texas. Maybe that's a hard road in the Pac-12. But you need to make a step forward. You need to be in contention in November, and you need to not have those games where you just shake your head and you go, like, how did you lose that one? That is what's holding back GJ Kinney and Texas State right now.
Well, there's nothing holding us back here on the College Football Podcast, Craven. That'll do it for this week's edition. For senior writer Mike Craven, I am Carter Yates, signing off for the Dave Campbell's College Football Podcast.